Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, enlightenment, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your brother, your host, and your friend, Rashid. And I want to take the time out right now to thank each and every one of you for giving me a little bit of your time out of your day. From the bottom of my heart and the depths of my soul, I want to take the time out to thank each and every one of you and show my appreciation because you didn't have to do this. And you did it anyhow. So I am humbled. I am grateful. So let's get it. We're waiting for Tom. There is a mix-up in the time thing, I think. So we're waiting for Tom to join us on the platform. So if he's not on in the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'll hit him up, and then we'll go from there, okay? Tomorrow, though, we'll have Carl Czar back on the show, my guy, Carl. He'll be on the show tomorrow. He hit me up yesterday, and we got to do it. We got to do us another show. Hey, man, what are you talking about? I was thinking the same thing. Let's do it. So we're going to do a show tomorrow. And then the day after that, we'll have journalist and writer Kiji Noah on the show also. So we're going to bring you the best guests. And it may not always work out smoothly, so you guys got to charge it to my head and not to my heart, because I have no control over the streaming process, and sometimes there's a little mix-up in the time, okay? And I'm just one person, and it's just me and my son. My son does the graphics and all of this stuff because I'm dumb as a brick when it comes to that. But anyway, again, let's go into the show. We'll wait for Tom to arrive, but there was something that just came out. They said another Russian ship was hit by drone attacks in the Black Sea. All right. This comes after the open revealing of the Germans wanting to strike the Crimean Bridge, the outing of the British who are operating the storm shadows, all of this stuff. Remember, I was saying this stuff long before it started coming out. I have been telling you, but a lot of this, and I hate to say this because people may misconstrue what I'm saying. They may not understand what I'm saying. But a lot of this stuff that is happening is Russia's fault. Let me say that again. A lot of the stuff that is happening right now is Russia's fault. And let me tell you why is Russia's fault. Is it their fault that they're defending their sovereignty? No. Is it their fault that they're trying to prevent from being encircled by the NATO war machine? No. Is it their fault that they're trying to crush the NATO and destroy NATO's objective with their proxy war in Ukraine? No. But what I am saying to you all is this, that had Russia dealt with NATO, dealt with the United States with a firmer hand, a lot of these things would not have escalated to the point they are right now. You should have, when Dmitry Medvedev was warning about the consequences of striking Russia proper, they should have followed through with the promise of striking whomsoever helped Ukraine to strike Russia. This is only fair. Listen, I am no advocate of war. I don't advocate war unless war is necessary. And sometimes, a lot of people don't realize this, sometimes war is necessary. Right? Would you not rather live on your feet, down on your feet than live on your knees? Huh? Any man worth his salt will defend his family with his life. Any man worth his salt will give his all to protect his loved ones, right? Now, if I put a word out there and say, matter of fact, let me go. I'm having problems, so you guys forgive me. I'm still having my guy, Mr. Carter is in the building. Good afternoon, Mr. Carter. Thank you. Okay. So listen. If I'm telling you, hey, Mr. Carter, do not supply Joe Blow over here with these weapons that can harm my children, that can strike in my yard. You've already moved across the state lines. You're in my state. You don't even live here. But you are using Mr. Joe Blow as a proxy to weaken me so that you can finally beat me and take my land. Do not arm Joe Blow with X, Y, and Z. Joel Bradford is in the building. We're waiting for Tom Luongo. If he's not in the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'll contact him again, because there's a time difference, a big time difference, okay? And we were trying to put together what time it would be, okay? Pedro is in the building. Hold on 1 second, everybody. I'll get back to my thought. Mr. Carter says, any mention about a Facebook outage? Just curious about how it's happening on another Super Tuesday. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. See, we learn something every day. Mr. Carter, I wasn't even aware of that. Now listen, on this issue of the escalation in Ukraine and the escalation in the Baltics, in Eastern Europe, Russia has a track record of watching the United States escalate. Especially, she should know that America is going to escalate when she's losing her position globally. When a person has ruled or dominated a situation for so long and they are no longer able to dominate, they feel entitled that they should dominate. And so they will do everything that they can, looking at past glory, to try to maintain their position of dominance. That's what people do. That's what organizations do. That's what empires do. So if this is the case, you already know that they wanted to escalate, right? You already knew this. Now, I'm looking at the chat while you guys are talking to. So listen, let's look at this thing in real terms, okay? I just want you to understand something. Let's look at this in real terms. And shout out to my people over on Rumble, Odyssey, Locals, Twitter, Twitch, and this is something else is streaming too. I cannot remember at this moment. But listen, when we look at this situation as grown men, grown women, and we look at it for what it is, everybody on earth knows that the United States and NATO is pushing a proxy war. You have said it, you've stated it, everything. Russia has just come out and revealed audio of Germany talking about striking the Crimean Bridge. Now, right after that, there was an escalation. We've just got word that maybe another Russian ship has been sunk in the Black Sea on Russia's from Russia's Black Sea fleet. Okay, now what are the options now? Forget then. What are the options now? Sink 2 of NATO ships. Sink 2 of them. If Russia does not act, the situation will continue to escalate. Some people say, well, if they do, we can go to World War III. Where the hell you think we're going right now? You think we're on a yellow brick road to Oz? Huh? One thing for sure, when you capitulate to bullies, it only emboldens them to do more and disregard more of your interests. You are a nuclear power. You are a military power. As a matter of fact, you control the escalatory situation in Europe. And yet you're continuing to allow Russian soldiers to be killed, Russian civilians to be killed, the destruction of property, businesses, warships. When will you act? Because I've talked to somebody in Russia, all right? Matter of fact, one of the guys that I had on the show, I've talked to him. And the people in Russia are like, now it's time now to strike back. It's time now. NATO is losing its position. I don't think people understand the significance of this and what this means. We know that NATO, the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization, the largest and the greatest terrorist operation and grouping in the history of the world, are escalating because the anchor to this system, America, is losing her dominance. She's losing it technologically, politically, economically, and militarily. She reminds me of those old boxers who stayed past their prime and wind up taking an embarrassing loss, right? But She's so desperate for the glory, for the adulation, for the applause, and for the adrenaline rush of a win that she's turned to steroids. That's an escalation. This is the same thing with America. She has dominated so completely for so long that she feels that she's entitled to continue. Now, if what is being reported is true, the sinking of a Russian naval vessel, and I saw a video, I can't tell what is what is not. But Pedro, I'll see you. I'll put up your comment in a minute, and I'll address that. When will Russia hit back? They continually are hitting you. You are continually suffering losses, even as you win. And yeah, these may be pinpricks. But if you continue to allow them to look, have you ever heard of that statement? Death by 1,000 cuts. Right? So you get a bloody nose, you're beating the bully, but you get a bloody nose. Well, you're beating the bully proxy. And we now find out the bully proxy is no match for you. Now it's time to turn to the source of the problem and deal with the problem. Because if you don't deal with the bully, more existential threats will pop up. They will pop up everywhere. More covert operations will be taken against you, and more proxy wars will be fought against you by America and the West. They have already said that they see Ukraine as a way to weaken Russia. Well, this has been open. Remember, Victoria Nuland openly stated that they have some nasty surprises for Russia. Remember that? And it wasn't 2 weeks later, a week and a half later, look what happens. So that, listen, it makes the world believe that you have no cojones. This is what I'm saying. When you're attacking Ukraine, but you're not getting to the source of the problem. It is almost like suffering from cancer and only dealing with a blood clot. Once you remove the blood clot, you still have the cancer because you have not dealt with the core issue of your ill health. And it's better to address it right now before the cancer metastasizes. Do you understand? So, by the divine right of nature, for when you're born into this universe, self-preservation is the first law of nature. It's rule number one. It's law number one. It is inherently given to you to preserve your life and the sanctity and security of your life. If you don't put that law into effect, what use is it of you living? If you're always living in fear of what might happen. But we know what is happening. Why don't you address what is happening and deal with what might happen after you deal with what is happening? I don't understand. I don't think you guys understand. If Russia does not address the situation head on, I mean the bullies, not the puppet, the bullies, this thing will metastasize into a situation that is untenable and unstoppable. Do you understand? Do you understand? Because Russia is embarrassing the Western world by outproducing them, out-manufacturing them. Their economy is more resilient than the Western economies. This is an embarrassment to America specifically, and the largest terrorist organization in the history of the world, NATO, especially and specific, generally. Excuse me. I'm gonna in a minute I'm gonna play a clip and I'm gonna go to something, try to get in contact with Tom, okay? Because it may be a time delay or something like, and he and I were talking about that before. It may be a time mix up. We might have the hours wrong because I know sometimes I'll have a guest and I'll look at the hours on Google and I'll put those hours in, and sometimes Google's things are off a little bit. Okay. But Listen, from my ears to your, from my mouth to your ears. If we're not able to remedy this, we will have him back on. Okay, he's already been on here. We'll have him back on. There's no problem. All right, but you're still going to get a show. You're still going to get some information. We're still going to discuss relevant issues. We're still going to dissect things, and we're still going to use common sense, right, in real time to surmise what we should be doing or what should be done for the benefit of X, Y, and Z, okay? This is very important. Now, Pedro says, I'm going to put this right up on the screen, all right? Pedro says we're well on the path to World War III, and it scares me itless, right? We're not on the path to World War III. We're already in World War III. Seriously, all jokes aside. I'm not being facetious, none of that. All jokes aside, we're already in World War III, all right? And what you're looking at, see, some of you think that this is the beginning of the end of the world that we have known, not the world specifically, but civilization, the civilization that we've known. So we'll call the civilization the world, okay? But this is not the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning. We're like deep into the collapse of the rules-based international order. We're deep into this. Every barometer that you measure things by shows us that we are in the midst of an economic, political, cultural collapse. And also, we're in the midst of the collapse of Western military dominance. And this is something that doesn't sit well with Britain. This doesn't sit well with America. This doesn't sit well with those who have benefited from colonialism, those who have benefited from exploitation of the masses. So when they have ruled so soundly for so long, and they see that the rule is coming to an end, they're now ready to make a stand. They believe that they can put the genie back in the bottle, that they can stop the rise of BRICS, they can stop the emergence of the global south, that they can stop the collapse of American dominance. And their plan to do it is to wage war. I'm going to tell you how insane these people are, okay? Because war has worked so well for them to keep them in power, to keep them to colonize the world, to keep them under boot and foot, that they believe that if they can execute this leader, overthrow that leader, invade that country, surround that country, that they will be able to yet and still stop the collapse of the American dollar as the world reserve currency and stop the collapse of the American economy, and at the same time stop the decline and collapse of the American military machine. They believe that. Here's the kicker. They believe that they need to do that, but guess what? They're doing it on your buck, right? They're borrowing from the same people that they have labeled enemies or a clear and present threat. Now you make that make sense. For 1 second, let's reflect on that. I say that Joel Bradford is a national security threat, a pressing national security threat against my household. And at the same time that I come to that conclusion, right? I go to Joel and say, I need you to buy my bonds so that I can fund the revamping of my house, so that I can go and buy more goods to supply to my family. And if you don't give it to me, Joel, I'm going to sit across the street from your house with a shotgun waiting for your children to come outside. That's essentially what the Western world is doing. That's essentially what America is doing. She's trying to hold the entire world at gunpoint to continue dollar hegemony, which in turn means the continuing of the American military machine and the Western NATO war machine. And they don't even see They don't even see that this is not even sound thinking, sound logic. But when you are inebriated, when you're drunk off the power that you once had, and the position that you once were in, and the level of influence that you once had, and the riches that you once enjoyed, right? If you look at this and you look at a drunk person, right? And this person is really inebriated, you'll see that sometimes they're detached from reality. They're really detached from reality. And this detachment from reality have them believing that their unsound, irrational thoughts and plans are actually sound and rational. But those who are sober to it, who are watching it, and who are listening, saying these people are crazy as hell. There's nothing sound in their doctrine. And there's a scripture verse that I like to bring about, that I always bring on the show. Though they did not like to retain God in their consciousness, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not seemly. So, because they talk to God, see, all of the people in Congress, I'm a Christian and I'm a Muslim and I'm this and I'm a Jew and all that, and they live contrary to the principles of what they claim to be. For the public, they are that. But policy-wise, they're demons, they're devils. To ignore the slaughter of masses, the shedding of blood on a massive scale, the exploitation of resources, life, energy, and brain power. That is Satan in itself. But they've been given over to reprobateness. They think what they're doing is right. But all those who have sound judgment and a rational sense understand that the policies are unsound, irrational, and unsustainable. You understand? Yeah. So, shout out to my guy, Perseverance. Chameleon is in the building. All right. So, we're looking at this. We're looking at all of this stuff unravel and unfold right in front of us. Now, back to what I was saying. Russia, it is being reported, lost a ship. It was either sunk. I saw it on a video, and it looked like the ship was hit, and it was a fireball when it was hit. Boom. And I think it sunk. I'm not sure. I don't even know if it was a Russian ship. You understand? I'm not an expert in the videos. I'm not an expert in any of that stuff, okay? But it came to me. I watched it. I read what was said to me, and I'm looking at it like, whoa. Now, what comes after that? What comes after that? Common sense tells us, if it's me, retaliation. If you hit me in the lip, I'm knocking out your teeth. I'm breaking your nose. I'm going to swell up your eye. And I might even pop one of your eardrums when I hit you. That's what I'm going for. I'm going to, in the shortest amount of time, I'm going to level the most amount of damage that I can to show you that you better back up off of me, because the next time, if there is a next time, I won't be so generous and merciful the next time around. This is self-preservation, the first law of nature. So now what should happen, and I'm not, for YouTube and the censors, I'm not advocating war. I'm giving you war scenarios. Right? Hypothetically, if it were me, any NATO vessels in the Black Sea or in the Mediterranean or in the Pacific would be at risk of being sunk. And I would not hide my hand in doing this. I would have, but what Putin should do right now is mount the rostrum. He has a bully pulpit, mount it, and explain to the people of the world, not just to Russia, what just transpired. Give evidence of who had their hands in it, because the Russians know this. They have intelligence dominance on the battlefield. Go before the world and say, they have been constantly provoking us. We have been as patient as possible, and now we must strike the bullies. And because listen, this is what America and the West like to do. They like to punch you in your chops and then plead for rational minds to prevail. They like to kick you in your groin and then ask for no escalation. They like to stab your children and your wife in the back and then say, hey, no, that was a mistake. Let's talk about it. No escalation. That's what they do. We have a history of it. I'm not making this stuff up. Look at the history of what they do. You can judge a book by its cover, right? A little bit. But to understand the meaning of the book, you got to delve into the book and look at it. So all we have to do is look at the history of America, look at the history of the European powers and what they have done, what they are doing. And right there, listen to me good. I know I'm in America. Some people are in European countries that are watching it. Even though you are afraid of the escalation, you know what I'm saying is right. You know it. By just default of being a human, you know what I'm saying is right. You know if you were in that position as a man or a woman and your family was suffering from that, you know that you would be forced into defending your family and you would take every measure available to you to protect the security and livelihood of your family. This is not something that's out of the blue. When you talk rational and you show people the rational way to deal with it, sometimes because you're so straightforward, it's so much to them that they can't digest it. But we got to stop playing around and we got to just deal with each other as men and women and call an ace and a spade a spade. So if I was in Russia, hypothetically, I would be Vladimir Putin and I would mount the roster. And I would give out this information. I would speak, because he can speak somewhat in English also, because he's Vladimir Putin's son on top of Blueberry Hill in English, playing the piano. So I'm pretty sure he can speak enough English to get by. So now, I would first address the Russian public. Then I would address the world. I would speak Russian, German, and English so that the world would know what I'm talking about. And then I would say, retaliate. Look what happened to Bush. Let me show you something that goes with what I'm saying. After 9/11, right? Did Bush turn the other cheek? Did Cheney turn the other cheek? Did the American administration ignore it? I remember Bush getting on top of a pile of rubble, addressing the first responders. And he was, and I'm gonna paraphrase it, and I might be chopping it up and mixing it up. But he said something like something to the fact that I hear you. He was telling the people, I hear you, and soon the whole world is going to hear you. And then after he made that announcement to the people, the first responders, America put together an attack on Afghanistan, an attack on Iraq, right? What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Hypothetically, I would strike 2 NATO warships. And if they want escalation from there, then we will give it to them. You cannot be on the receiving end of strikes. First of all, let me tell you something. Some people will say, well, just ignore it. Well, look at this. Oh, that was just an old warship. Oh, that was something. That old warship had people on it. People lives matter. People lives matter. I know in the Western world, property and money matters more. Listen to me. As a God-fearing man, people lives matter more. You understand? And those, from what I saw in that video, air defense system was activated and they were trying to take out, because there was a large amount of drones coming in, and they were taking out drones, and one drone hit the boat or the ship, and it was an explosion. So we know there's a loss of life there. We know that there's a loss of property, And guess what happens? Listen to me good. So now you have a huge loss of life. You have a loss of material, and have suffered material damage, because think about this. Those ships cost hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. They cost tens of millions and hundreds of millions to operate. And then the lives are priceless. How are you going to, as the president of a country, how are you going to go and address the grieving family members and allow the perpetrators of the crime to continue their criminality? See, I hear Colonel McGregor sometimes say, we got to deal with the criminality in America, right? And sometimes I think he's alluding to urban America because of what he said. But criminality is in Washington. There's no greater criminals than in Washington, D.C. Yeah, the little man on the corner might stick up somebody for $50, but the man in the suit that makes policy sticks up people for hundreds of billions of dollars. Yeah, the little man on the corner may fire a gun and kill somebody, which is wrong, and he should be dealt with for that, right? Where did he get the gun from? Where did he get that mentality from? Right? He got it from what's pervasive in America. Now, look at the man in the suit in Washington, D.C. He signs off on policy that doesn't kill one person. He signs on policies that causes the nation to invade another nation, to destroy infrastructure, buildings, and the independence of nations and the sovereignty of people, and the mass slaughter of huge amounts of people. So if we're going to deal with criminality, the best place to start is in Washington, D.C. The best place to start is in London, Brussels, Paris, because these are the greatest criminal minds in the history of the world. Nobody has perpetrated more wars on flimsy excuses than the members of NATO. If I'm lying, prove it. I don't care if you're man, woman, child, black, white, green, purple, orange, or polka dot. If I'm lying, prove it. America is the greatest purveyor of violence in the history of the world. She's the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world. And it always talks about criminality. What about the criminality to lie and then go to and destroy Libya? France was a part of it. The UK was a part of it. The NATO terrorist organization was a part of it. Not only did they destroy the government institution that makes a nation a viable state, they turned the population against each other, stole the resources, or still siphoning off resources, put covert military bases up there, and then they sodomized the leader of that nation and then killed him. Killed his children, sodomized the leader. Yeah, you heard what I just said. Do you know that they took the barrel of a gun with I don't know if it was a bayonet on the end or if it was something else, and they shoved it up Muammar Gaddafi's behind. And I'm being as censored as I can on saying this. Do you know that this is from the Christian West? This is what I'm talking about. Would Jesus have done that? And if we can attribute terrorism and say fundamentalism and Islamic extremism, and then we have the United States, France, the UK, who claim to be of the Christian West, to do that, is that not Christian fundamentalism, Christian extremism, and Christian terrorism? We can't have a double standard here. And again, didn't your Bible teach you against sodomy? And yet you perform sodomy on a popular leader? Would Jesus do that? Is that part of the Christian philosophy? No. But you did it. Man, I'm telling you. Hey, listen, as I'm talking to you all, this is what's tripping right here. I'm getting cut on locals right now, saying that the stream has stopped. It's been stopped. Now, I want to say this before we go further into the show, okay? For those of you who think Rumble is a big place, I want to, and for those who are listening on Rumble, I've been monitoring Rumble, right? And I noticed that they've been taking, every time I get 2 or 3 subscribers, they've been taking 2 or 3 subscribers. Every time. And we have pictures of it. So they cannot say that this did not happen. And this is not over a 1-week period. This is over weeks period of time, okay? Also, I don't know if this is a social media ban on me in this platform, but Twitter has been doing the same thing, okay? So it's not just exclusively to YouTube. Rumble and Twitter have been doing the same thing, and they've been doing it days apart from each other. Whenever one takes something from me, a day or 2 later, we'll see that they'll take another one. And as a matter of fact, I promise you guys something. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Okay. Hold on 1 second. And I want to bring something to your attention too about Twitter, Rumble, and YouTube. And the taking of my subscribers. I'm gonna bring it because this has everything to do with trying to silence alternative voices. Okay, I'm gonna bring something up to you all. Give me 1 second, okay? Just have patience with me, okay? Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. I pulled it up the other day because I was showing my brother when I was having coffee with my brother and my mother, my 2 brothers and my mother. We were having coffee, and I pulled it up. Let's see if I have it on this one. Oh man. Is that it? Is that it? Let me see. Nope, that's not it. Okay. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it for you guys. I have it on one of my backup things. I wanted to show it to you. I wanted to bring it to you guys' attention. Hold on 1 second. And I should have had it out before we did the show, but I thought Tom would be pressing on something else. But anyway, I'll bring it up in just when I find it, okay? Give me a second. But I want to go back to something real quick, okay? Let's talk for a minute. These nations, the West, they continue to ravage the whole world, right? If you're in opposition to their policies, they sanction you, they demonize you, they lie on you. Now, I want you to understand the arrogance of these nations because some people don't look at this like this, okay? I want you to see the arrogance, the racism in the policies, the arrogance, the exceptionalism, all of the fascism in all of this policy. America, the UK, France, Germany, and all of these European NATO nations constantly talk about territorial integrity, national sovereignty, right? And the will of the people. And yet, as a leader of a country, when you do the will of your people, and the will of your people is in opposition against their will, guess what happens? The West sanctions you, right? Now, here's something about the sanctions. Let's take a look at what they're doing with Russia. Because I want something to sink in with you, okay? And you'll see the point of this in just a second. So not only are they mad at Russia, and they sanction Russia, right? Now they have something called secondary sanctions, right? The secondary sanctions will be imposed upon nations that violate U.S. and European sanctions. Let me say that again. The secondary sanctions will be applied to those nations, sovereign nations, I may add, that violate U.S. and European sanctions. Do you know what that means? That means that they are holding the world hostage to European and U.S. policies. That means they say to hell with your national sovereignty, the will of your people, and the democratic will of the people. Because the people in these nations that they want to sanction all sympathize with Russia. So now you're going to sanction me for not following your dictates. Isn't that the slave master relationship? Your will doesn't matter unless I say it matters. Your interest doesn't matter unless I say it matters. Your sovereignty doesn't matter unless I say it matters. Your territorial integrity doesn't matter unless I say it matters. And if I say it matters, then it matters. But if I say it doesn't matter, guess what? It doesn't matter. So in their eyes, you are colonies to them. Because only from a slave master, slave perspective can you even rationalize that. I'm America. I'm mad at Burkina Faso. If you go help Burkina Faso, I'm sanctioning you. Now, I have nothing to do with your bickering. So if you're mad at them, that's cool. You and Burkina Faso take it out against each other. But how are you going to bring me up in your problems when I have nothing to do with any of that? I'm doing what's best for the economic and political interests of my nation. No, you can't do that. Why? Because the European Union has leveled sanctions on that nation. Hell, well, then you abide by your sanctions then. I'm not a member of the European Union, so I should not have to abide by your policies, your laws. That's for people in your territory. America has sanctioned Russia, and any second-hand nations that are coming to help Russia will be sanctioned. Well, is China a province of the United States? No. Do we recognize China as a sovereign nation, sovereign territory? Yes. Well, if that is the case, right, then how in the hell can you level sanctions against China when China is not under your political or economic jurisdiction? And the only way for you to rationalize that is through the slave master slave mentality. I'm the ruler. I make the laws. Do as I say, not as I do. Or if you, in any instance, act independently of U.S. or European law, sanctions, or policies, then you run afoul with the world system and we'll sanction you. Man, if that is not colonialism, racism, fascism, and exceptionalism all mixed together, then you tell me what is. But nobody looks at it like that. Now, look what Joel Bradford said about what I said to him about if I did something to his family. Listen to what and I come across it. And this is very important. When I was telling you all about going and sitting out in front of his yard and saying that I'm going to sit out there and wait for your children to come outside so I can shoot them. And I'm being facetious or whatever, right? But he understands what I'm saying when I'm talking about this. And this is what he says. We would be in a gun battle immediately. Why, Joel? Because you're a man, right? Because as a man, you want to protect your family, right? And you know that if I'm over there and I'm threatening you and your family, I have nothing good up my sleeves for you all. And so it is your inherent right to do what? To defend your life and the livelihood of your loved ones, right? Because any man worth his salt would do that. And if he's not willing to die for his family, he should not have a family. Do you understand? If a man would not stand up to defend his wife from death, to defend his children from death, he is not worthy of his family. That's a coward's action. Right? I forgot the men of the day, they don't have that integrity. A lot of them. They don't have that oomph about them. That they're willing to lay down their lives for the benefit of their families. So now that we have established that, let's relate that to what just took place, or what is assumed to have taken place. What should Russia's move be? Should it just strike in Ukraine and take out some mercenaries and some special forces? Huh? Well, let's look at it. Did the drone strikes hit warships in Ukraine's waters? No. Where did the warship? Where did they hit it? In the Black Sea Fleet, in the Black Sea, at its base. So this was a direct affront and attack on Russia's territorial integrity and its sovereignty. And if Russia does not react in a stern, strong way, the world will start losing faith in its resolve. I'm telling you this now. You have a nuclear arsenal, the largest nuclear arsenal in the world. You have a fighting force that is almost unmatched. Technologically, with the new weapons that you have at your disposal, you're unmatched. And to allow these clowns to continue to do that, the world is looking. So you don't just have an audience in Russia. You have an audience in Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, the Middle East, Eurasia, the Baltics, the Caucasus, and even nations in Europe that want to free themselves from the tentacles of the American empire. They're watching. And if you keep slowpoking and you keep allowing these things to take place, they're going to lose faith in you, and they're going to say, man, you know what? Russia's willing to go this far, but the rest of that stuff they're talking about is gibberish. Because if a person constantly told you, hey, if this happens to me, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and then you're standing there and you're witnessing it happening, and they continue to try to minimize it, obfuscate it, ignore it, right? Because the person that's doing it can fight. After a while, you lose faith in that person. You said that person is just running his mouth. They're not going to do that. This is the situation that Russia is putting itself in. That is the situation. And I relate these things because other people don't. They want you to think that everything is hunky-dory, that Russia should just strike in Ukraine. I'm saying this, I'm not advocating strikes for nothing, but I'm saying hypothetically, if it were me and that was my country and I had the military resources of Russia, when my ship sinks, those who are behind the sinking of the ship will also lose ships and manpower, because it wasn't just the loss of a ship and loss of money. More than both of those, it was the loss of lives. You understand? So why should I be the one to only suffer? Why should I be the only one to lose manpower? Why should I be the only one to lose warships? Oh, you want to play the game? Okay, don't get mad when I play the game with you. And it goes back to what Pedro says. We're well on the path to World War III, and it scares me itless, right? All right, and then he goes and he says this: a wounded animal is the most dangerous. That's right. It's the most dangerous. That's absolutely right. Pedro, that is absolutely right. And that's the point I've been making. And think about this. When an animal is wounded and they feel that their kingdom or whatever, or their area of control is threatened, they lash out. And you may just be an innocent bystander walking by. Guess what happens? They don't care. They are not thinking about whether you're an innocent bystander. They are just thinking about, hey, I'm wounded and I'm trying to protect what I deem as mine. So you as a person, when you see the dog running at you, you don't just let the dog run up on you to bite you, do you? Common sense tells you that you do everything, right, to keep that dog off of you, right? Is that not right? And even if it means taking a dog out to prevent him from hurting you, you'll do that, right? And if you can't take the dog out and the dog attacks you, guess what you're going to do? You're going to fight like hell against the dog. And you're going to be saying in your mind, if I'm going down, I'm taking the dog down with me, right? Same thing. Russia's political elite, they have got some soul searching here. You know, I know that on the other channels, the major channels, the big channels, they don't like touching these issues because they have a vested interest of why not to touch these issues, because they may get censored, banned, or lose their financial backers or whatever. Man, I don't care nothing about that. I don't care nothing about it. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I didn't get on here to just have a beauty contest. I got on here to tell you the truth, to tell you a different perspective, because these people always overshoot the perspective that is needed. I want to ask every one of you who are watching me via any platform, if Russia were arming Mexico against America to take back Texas, would America say that Russia is a party to the war? I'm asking. If Russia supplies, arms, trains, gives real-time intelligence, and has embedded military forces that are controlling and launching missiles into U.S. proper, will Russia be considered a party to the war? All of you will say yes. Now, if America has ships in the Gulf of Mexico, while Russia is helping Mexico fight to regain lost territory that was seized from them, because it was, and Russia sinks multiple U.S. ships, would America just say, hey, don't escalate? Would America say, hey, we don't want any escalation. We're just going to strike Russia and Mexico? Do you believe America would do that? Huh? Common sense tells you no. And if that is no, and no is the case, then why should you expect Russia to do that? That's what I'm saying. See, some of us, we have this in our head. Even as we're seeking truth, we still can't get out of the gravitational pull of the Western way of thinking. Either the first law of nature applies to everybody or it doesn't. Either everybody is equal under the law or they aren't. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's an either or. We don't have to make this thing complicated. We can break it down to its very last compound. And then we can get an understanding of what's real and what's not. Oh, by the way, I want to say this too. This week we'll have videos up for the channel members, so be looking out for that. And we'll have a stream on Patreon also, so be looking out for that in the next few days, okay? So be looking out for that. I was supposed to say that at the beginning of the show. I want to apologize for not saying that at the beginning of the show. But seriously, why does the West get a pass on this? Rashid, you're advocating for war because if Russia does that, America and NATO will go to war. Hey, they already have war. So Russia's supposed to grind its teeth together, close its mouth, and allow for that to happen so that it won't escalate. And every time people say that, guess what happens? It escalates. Every time people say Russia shouldn't do this because it may escalate, guess what happens? America in the West escalates. So we've tried everybody else's moves. How about you try common sense? Everybody say Russia don't strike Poland because this will be such and such. Hell, if Poland is supplying weapons, I'm going to strike them. If the United States is targeting buildings in Belgorod, how about if I turn the table and target some in Alaska? Do you understand me? Listen, these are hypotheticals. So for YouTube, don't censor me, do not block me. What we're doing, we're venturing into a frame of thought to analyze different perspectives. We're not advocating war. We're not advocating the initiation of war. As a matter of fact, we hope that peace reigns supreme. But when we're dealing with reality, we have to deal with what reality gives us. And then we can break down this and give different viewpoints, okay? So YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, please. Odyssey hadn't been that way, so I'm not worried about Odyssey at this moment. But these platforms, please just listen. People have different thoughts. We're not robots. We're not programmed the same way. We're not boxed in. That's the problem. Everybody has been boxed in by propaganda. Everybody. And so it limits your thought process. When you have a limited view, you have limited ideas, which means that it brings about limited solutions. When you think outside the box, the world is a stage. And it opens up to you new horizons and new perspectives so that you can come up with new ideas and new solutions. But if you don't explore things, you can never get to a new solution. This is what I'm saying. Shout out to, I'm looking at what's going on in the chat. Hold on one second. Boom. Shout out to Ping One. Shout out to No Way Out. Shout out to No Way Out. This is what No Way Out says. That's right, Rashid. Even the Cuban Missile Crisis was happening because of the reckless action of the U.S. That's right. A lot of people think that it was just Russia placing missiles and nuclear missiles in Cuba. But it was the Russian military was responding to the U.S. putting those, Pershings missiles into Turkey and into Germany. They were in Germany too. Okay? These were nuclear-armed, nuclear-tipped cruise missiles. And Russia was responding. Now, here's the thing. When Russia responded, how was America's response to Russia's responding? Right? America blockaded Cuba and threatened to go to World War III. Right? I thought Cuba was a sovereign territory. I thought Cuba, being a sovereign nation and a sovereign territory, had the right to place whatever it wanted on its territory. Isn't that what NATO said? Isn't that what Stoltenberg said about Ukraine? Which is right on the border with Russia, which is historically part of Russia, quote unquote. That Ukraine is a sovereign territory, a sovereign nation, and it has the right to have whoever it wants on its territory with whatever they want on their territory. But when it came to Russia putting missiles in Cuba, which is 95 to 105 miles away from the tip, listen, not close, just the tip of Florida, America was ready to take the world to World War III. The hypocrisy, the exceptionalism, the madness of those in power. Hey, it's a threat if you do it to me, but how dare you say this is a threat? This is innocent if I do it to you. The elite and the right in this country and the liberals in this country are screaming about what could possibly be on the border with the United States, right? And some of it is hypothetical, but we know in reality what's on the border with Russia, right? We know in reality what's on the border with China, how America is deploying Marines just 2 to 5 miles from the coast of China. I'm going to say that again. The United States is deploying Marines on an island just 2 to 5 miles from the Chinese coast, the Chinese mainland. You understand? Now, here's the kicker, because this does not get talked about enough, okay? America says she recognizes one China, and that Taiwan, or Chinese Taipei, is an integral part of the one China policy, right? So to the international community, America's policy, her stated policy, is that Taiwan is a part of China. Her practical policy is to ignore, to circumvent her own acknowledgement of Taiwan being a part of China and deploying troops, Marines, to Taiwan. And while she's deploying them to the main part of Taiwan, she's also deploying them to the Taiwanese island that is closer to China, which is like 2 to 5 miles away from the Chinese coast. Now, here's another kicker. Now, that is not provocative. It's China being belligerent according to the United States. See what I mean about this exceptionalism, this racism, this fascism, right? And in another thing, she has bases in South Korea, right? She has bases in Japan. So what she's doing, she's hemming Russia up on this side. She's hemming China up on this side, all around the periphery of China and Russia, bases. And then she puts pressure on her client government in Seoul, Korea, to allow for America to build a base, I think on Jeju Island, Jeju, I think it's called Jeju, Jeju, I believe. Jeju, I believe that's the island, which is right off the coast of China. So now you have a Taiwanese island and Taiwan itself, which are part of China, that the United States is deploying troops to. You have them in the Philippines. You have them in the small Pacific Islands, right? You have them in Australia. And then you now putting pressure on your client government in Korea so that you can place warships on an island right off the coast of China. That's not provocative. Huh? You don't see that as provocative. You don't see that as a threat to the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of the Chinese nation? What if China did that to the United States? See, I ask these questions because nobody else does. We still haven't gotten back out. When I was talking to you all, I was hitting thumb up. So we'll see. Maybe something came up. I don't know. We'll correct this, okay? But I still wanted to give you guys a show. All right. And one monkey don't stop the show. We got to still give the truth out, okay? All right. So what if China did that to America? Would that be acceptable? If China said, you know what? The Gulf of Mexico is international water. So I'm going to set up me a military rig right out here. And it'll be a artificial island just outside of America's territorial waters. Would America take that to heart, or would she just say, oh, you know what? China has that right. Huh? What if China says, we recognize America's sovereignty over Texas, and then deploys the Chinese armed forces to help those Texas militias that want to secede from the Union? How would America take that? And then while America is going around trying to deal with that, the Chinese also in California dealing with the indigenous people there and saying, hey, listen, we're going to arm you, we're going to do this, and we're pivoting to the Western Hemisphere. But America should not look at this as being aggressive. No. We're not. We believe that California and Texas is an integral part of America, all while funding, financing, and aiding militias that want to secede from the Union. How would America take that? I'm asking. Huh? I'm asking. Because this is very important. Oh, man. So, again, hold on one second, everybody. I'm going to have to play a little clip real quick, and I'm going to see if I can get him up on the phone real quick, okay? So give me a second. Let me find something that is about 4 or 5 minutes. It may be an old clip, but just give me a second. Let me play this clip real quick. Let me see if I can get Tom on the line, okay? Give me a second. All right. Where is it at? All right, we'll play this one. I'll be right back.
Greece set to hold a second parliamentary election in June, following the last polls at the end of May. One party, the Democratic National Liberation Movement, or DKEA, is calling for an independent Greece, which decides its own national future, in contrast to the EU states. The DKEA party was established earlier this year in opposition to the current Greek government's course. Its stated goals are to strive for Greek unity and independence and an exit from the EU and NATO. It's also calling for resistance to Western hegemony, which, according to its leader, is destroying the country. The party founder and ex-Energy and Environment Minister, Panagiotis Lafazanis, says that Greece should reject Western influence and strive for closer ties with Russia.
The parties that will enter parliament have approximately the same political position, especially these three parties: New Democracy, Syriza and Kinal, Movement of Change. Their political positions are almost identical. All three parties are products of the Western centres, Brussels, Berlin and Washington. They unquestioningly follow Western politics in a very subservient way. What the West says is the law for these parties. Greece has become a protectorate. Greece has passed into the hands of the oligarchy and its economy is literally sold out to transnational centres. And it's this Greece that matters because whichever of these parties forms the government, the political position will be the same. An equally reactionary, anti-people, anti-social and servile political position. First and foremost, our party, the Democratic National Liberation Movement, or DKIA for short, is against the protectorate status imposed on our country, against our country's dependence and its transformation into a kind of colony of Brussels, Berlin and Washington. We want an independent Greece, a Greece which will actually decide its own national and social future. For us, this is the main issue. The second issue that disguises us is our clear and precise position regarding the war in Ukraine. We say that Russia is right in this war. Russia did not cause this war. On the contrary, the war was waged by the United States, NATO and the Ukrainian Nazi regime. They caused this war, they are aggravating it, and they are leading Ukraine, Europe and the whole world into the abyss. Unfortunately, this unanimity that exists regarding the condemnation of Russia is literally destructive for Greece, for our region and, of course, for Europe and the whole world. This unanimity regarding Russia leads our country into even bigger dependence, carries even greater threats to our security and our survival, because Greece has now turned into a base for a big Western campaign against Russia. From the American bases located in Greece, troops and weapons systems are launched against Russia and are sent to Ukraine and neighbouring countries. For us, this is unacceptable. This puts Greece at great risk. We want Greece to be independent, to strive for very close, friendly cooperation with Russia, with which we have absolutely no disagreements. DKIA is the only party that says Russia is right. Russia is not the aggressor. Russia cannot be isolated. And vice versa, Russia should be helped in dialogue with Ukraine in order to find a fair, peaceful solution based on realistic positions. None of the mass media in Greece show our position. It does not give us the opportunity to speak to the Greek public. This shows that there is no democracy in Greece. On the contrary, there's a dictatorship, because democracy means that the voice that is different is also heard. NATO wants to escalate the war in Ukraine to an extreme form. I think that we are at the beginning of this war, its expansion and not the end of it. There is no benefit for Greece in supporting NATO in this war of aggression in Ukraine or in helping make this war more intense. Today, Russia is not at war with Ukraine, but at war with the entire West. For the first time in history, one country is opposed to almost everything, the so-called developed world. I'm talking about governments, of course, not people. Greece must say one big no to NATO, must say that it will not follow the sanctions imposed on Russia because they are illegal, unfair and unfavourable for our nation and our national path. Greece must stop sending weapons to Ukraine, which escalates the war, and all this needs to be done right now. This is our position, and it should be the position of Greece. Greece today can play a positive role in stopping the evil that's happening now in Ukraine. This should be the mission of our country, rather than being a colony and a pawn of NATO, America, Brussels, Germany, and of course, in this dirty war.
So we might have to reschedule that. Okay, some's up, some comes up. We have to deal with it, but we have to keep stepping, keep pushing, keep moving. Okay, you know. So also shout out to hold on, I gotta give props, because while I'm looking at the chat on YouTube, sometimes I forget to look at the chat on Rumble. You know, I'm new to all of this. I'm not a tech guy, so I want everybody, when I don't personally acknowledge your comments or whatever, it's because I haven't seen them. I try to personally respond to everybody's comment, and I really apologize to those over there on Rumble, because sometimes I forget. Charge it to my head and not to my heart, because I really want to acknowledge everybody. So today, Deborah Wise Woman 5555, shout out to you and thank you. You say exactly, you the best. No, you the best. No, we're the best. All right. So that's how we do that. Listen, as we talk on these issues, There has to be adults in the room, okay? There have to be adults in the room, because sometimes people don't say these things because they're scared of alienating the audience, or they're scared of alienating investors, or they're scared to alienate government officials or their contacts. I give two flips about it. Two flips. Because truth only offends those who are in opposition to the truth. Say, for instance, if you enlighten me on something that I've never known and it's the truth, guess what happens? Because I want the truth, that pre-held thought that I had in my head goes out the window and I acknowledge the truth. We've got to get to that and stop holding on to falsehood, because falsehood cannot endure. We've got to be able to bear witness to the truth, even if the truth is against you. I mean, these people are built different. You know, there's so much going on. As a matter of fact, let me see something. I'm going to bring some stuff up on the channel member stream, and I'm also going to bring some up on the Patreon stream also. A few things I'm going to elaborate on that I got some information on, okay? Hopefully it doesn't come out before I do the streams, but if it does, you know I'm going to put my twist to it to give it to you with passion and motivation and drive and all the fervor that comes with that, okay? So listen what it said. This is this just made it. What? Check this out. This is on RT. Victoria Nuland quits after all of that bloodshed in Ukraine, all of that bloodshed in Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali, after all the bloodshed in Palestine and across the Middle East and Africa, and the bloodshed that was caused in Central America. One of the neocons quit. Let's read what it says. The Deputy Secretary will leave the U.S. State Department in several weeks, Anthony Blinken has announced. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland is poised to leave her post in the coming weeks, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has announced. The senior official, widely regarded as a foreign policy hawk, played a key role in the Western-backed coup in Ukraine in 2014. Now, before I read any more of this, when she leaves, she has pensions because she's worked in the State Department through multiple administrations. So even though she has all that blood all over her body, all over her hands, she has some checks that's coming to her. But the people who were affected by her policies have people to bury, people to mourn, and they have to deal with hurt or that missing piece of their family or the missing piece of their lives for the rest of their lives. How is that just and how is that fair? Huh? Let's go a little further. In December 2013, she visited Kyiv with the late Senator John McCain to hand out pastries to armed protesters in the city's central square. Days before the February coup, as orchestrated mass murder gripped the city, she was recorded discussing how to midwife this thing. And then U.S. Ambassador to Kyiv, Jeffrey Pyatt, reportedly exclaiming F the EU when it came to a choice of a new leader in the war-torn country. I'm not going to read much more of that. But that is breaking news because it's in red going across the screen on RT that Victoria Nuland quits. Well, if she's going to be there for a few more weeks, guess what? She got many more bodies up under her coming. I'm telling you this. She is somebody that's just like Hillary Clinton. They have bodies galore, just like Bill Clinton, have bodies galore. And when you get too close to them, people wind up suiciding themselves or getting killed in car accidents or falling off 8-story buildings or something like that. It's crazy, right? These people are megalomaniacs, and you guys respect them because they have a suit and tie on and because they are in an office. Do you know most people in office are sociopaths? The reason they aspire to office because they have an unbridled lust for power. It's nothing benevolent about most of these people. It's not that they'll talk the talk. I'm going to do this when I get in office. And when they get in office, they do the opposite. because it was about positioning themselves for a career, positioning themselves for profit, positioning themselves so that they can have power to exert over the masses. These people are sociopaths. And the sooner you get that through your head, the sooner you can start recognizing that we're in a world that is crashing, and it's crashing quickly. Listen to what it says right here. It says, EU mulling using frozen Russian assets for Ukrainian army. Now check this out. Just yesterday, what is her name? Who used to be the U.S. Fed chair? Yellen, who is now the Secretary of the Treasury. You know she's stealing money. You know it. But anyway, she said that America and the West needs to be more active on finding ways to seize Russian assets. Now listen. Remember what I told you about people who are inebriated, people who are drunk on what they used to be, the power and the influence that they used to be able to have over other people, right? Now, all of these lawyers, international lawyers, all of these economists, all of these business heads say, don't touch Russia's money. If you touch Russia's money, it can cause a stampede out of the dollar. It can cause more nations to quit the SWIFT system. It will upend European financial security. It will upend U.S. dollar supremacy and hegemony, and upend the Western monetary system. With all of these warnings, even from other nations, the EU and America are announcing more plans to try to seize money. Now, oh my God, I get headaches sometimes thinking about these people. If there's a sign out there and they say, listen, slow down in the next 50 feet. When you come to the stop sign, make a complete stop and sit for 1 minute. The sign says this, right? Because there are high-speed trains that are coming through. Now, when you get to that sign, and you read that sign and you go through and you refuse to slow down, and when you get to that stop sign, you refuse to stop, or you refuse to sit there for a minute. And then you try to cross those lanes, those tracks that has 1, 2, 3. And so there's 3 high-speed trains coming. Now, if you run that stop sign and that high-speed train hits you, is it the engineer who drove one of the trains' fault? Is it the sign makers who made the signs' fault? Is it the people who dug the hole and put the signs in? Is it their fault? Or is it your fault for ignoring all of the signs along the way that told you, hey, 50 feet from now, slow down, you'll be coming up on a stop sign, and another 100 feet, stop. And don't just stop for a second. Stop for at least 1 minute. Why? Because we have high-speed trains coming through, and they cannot stop, okay, in time for you to get across. Now, you willfully ignored those signs, those warnings, and then you went through and got hit. Whose fault is it? So now we know it's your fault. So now the EU and the US are willfully ignoring all of the signs on the post where economists are saying, don't do this, where investors are saying, don't do this, where business CEOs are saying, hey, we can't do this, where national lawyers are saying, hey, this is illegal, we can't do this, where international lawyers are saying, hey, if you do this, this may be the consequences of it, so don't do this because it's illegal. And you willfully and willingly ignore all of the warnings and signs. Now, if you go ahead and seize this money, and then Russia retaliates, and then you see the unraveling of not only the dollar as the world reserves currency, but you see the upending of the financial system underpinned under SWIFT, which means that, listen, here's the kicker. This is what I'm getting to. So you see Russia seize European assets. Russia seizes U.S. assets in Russia. China is looking at it. China has more assets in these nations than Russia does. So guess what happens? China starts pulling out its assets. Other nations start seeing that. Guess what they start doing? They start running for the door too. Guess what happens? Inflation spikes. Guess what happens? The price of all goods go up. Guess what happens? Energy goes up. Guess what happens? There is a breach in the trust of the monetary system dominated by the European Union and the United States. And then guess what happens? The currency loses its position, which is a domino effect, because once the dollar loses its position, boom, 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 the pound and the euro will also follow suit. And guess what happens to Europe? Because Europe has little to no resources. Europe pays a huge price. Why? Because now your currency no longer is worth what you want it to be worth. And because you have nothing to back it and you have no resources, guess what happens? Now you have to deal with a new paradigm where the people who you used to rule now are in a position to rule you if they want to, because they have the resources. They also dictate the price of currency up or down. They also dictate oil and gas prices. They will also dictate commodities. Guess what happens? Your living standard collapses. Guess what happens? Mass poverty and hunger in the streets in Europe. Guess what happens? You're going to mirror me back in the United States. Yes, America has all those resources in the ground and in the caves, right? But it costs money to extract resources. And when you don't have the currency as the reserve currency of the world, it's going to take more of those dollars to get smaller amounts of the fuel, smaller amounts of the commodities, right? Smaller amount of the shipments, because your dollar will not be accepted. So what you're doing, you're taking a gun, you're opening it up, you're filling all chambers with bullets, hollow points. You're closing it up, and you're getting your friend the EU to come next to you and say, hey, we're going to play Russian roulette, right? Only problem is I'm going to hold a gun up to your head. Boom, Europe is shot dead. Boom, America is shot dead, economically and politically and geopolitically. That's essentially what they're doing. Let's read a little bit before we get off the air, okay? The funds belonging to Moscow Central Bank have accrued nearly $4.4 billion in interest over the past year. Now, they've acknowledged that these are Russian funds. So the interest of those funds is Russian. So whether you take the funds or the interest, that's theft. Right? Is that not right? If you take something that does not belong to you and you take it against the will of the owner of that, that's strong arm robbery. Right? That's a crime. That's a felony. And the world is watching America and Europe commit felonies to try to hold on to this pipe dream of using Ukraine against Russia, then pivoting to the east to try to bring down China and stop China's rise. Absolutely insane. But let's go further. The EU is discussing the option of using profits generated by frozen Russian assets for not only reconstruction in Ukraine. Hold on, how can you reconstruct Ukraine when Ukraine is under war? And Russia just knocked the buildings down or your industries down. How are you going to build up Ukraine in the midst of war? Huh? This is a con job. The money that they see, that money, they want that money for themselves, but they want to put Ukraine on the front of it so that they can steal it. Because you cannot reconstruct buildings in a war zone, especially when a superior adversary can destroy your industry, your buildings, your homes, everything at will. That's lunacy, right? Let's go a little further. It says, but also for military support, the bloc's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, has said, listen, EU nations agreed unanimously in late January to set aside billions of euros of windfall profits from frozen Russian funds in Europe to help fund Ukraine's reconstruction. Now, for those of you who are in the chat, let me see something. We got, and I know after the show that this is what they do to me. Check this out. Uh-oh. What the world just happened? No, they not. Took me off the screen. You may have been able to see me, but my whole screen just disappeared. My dashboard, everything. Okay, now it's back. Now let's go to something. All right, let me go to the chat real quick. There is about there's a few people in the chat. Okay, we got people in. Oh, now with all shows, it doesn't matter how many shows. Like when I did the show yesterday with Larry Johnson, we had about 147, 174 flipped. I don't remember live. Right, I'm looking at my dash, and after the show was over, it said 4 views, and it had 27 likes. 4 views, 27 likes. Make sense, okay? Put that in your head. So we know at the end of the show, they'll put 2 or 3 views or whatever like this. This is how they do it. We have about, according to my dashboard, it's about 65%. It's been fluctuating between 65 and 85 people live up and down, okay? Watch. It'll be 2 subscribers. Go after the show, watch. Just do this for me, please. After the show, watch how many views it says on there, okay? Please do that for me, okay? So you'll see what I'm saying is real. All right. But anyway, so now let's take, for instance, Flying Crocodile is in the building. And Flying Crocodile has $1 million, right? And I have access to that $1 million. It's not mine to use, but it's Flying Crocodile. And then it has accrued $200,000 in interest. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take that interest right there, and I'm going to help such as it. I want to steal the money now, but I'm using a front to help poor people. I said, you know what? I'm going to take the interest of Flying Crocodile's money. I'm not even consulting him now. I'm going to do it, and I'll use it to give to the charity. And the charity will help feed the homeless. Now, the charity is mine. It's Flying Crocodile's money, and it's Flying Crocodile's interest. Yet I'm dictating what is being done with the interest and with the money without even consulting Flying Crocodile. That is a stick-up. That is a stick-up. Is that not right? And because they're using financial instruments to do this and political instruments to do this, we can then classify it as strong arm robbery. Right? I'm just saying. How healthy is a financial system when those who are supposed to safeguard the financial system are the ones robbing the financial system? That is tantamount to leaving the foxes in the chicken house, in the hen house, to watch the hens. How would that work out for you? Huh? Man, these people are crazy. I'm telling you, they think that they're making sense. They think that they are initiating policies that will be beneficial to them. They don't care about the masses, but to them. In reality, they're undermining their political, their geopolitical, and their economic standing. They're undermining. This is real. I'm not lying. They're undermining it. And it's causing the nations to break away from dollar hegemony, from using the euro, from using the pound, and seeking to join on with the BRICS, and seeking to join on with the Chinese pay system, the Eurasian pay system, the Russian pay system, the African pay system, the Latin American pay system. Everybody is wanting their way out of the dollar because they see that the crooks in the suits don't care anymore that they're crooks. They have taken off the suits and put on the mask now. And they're ski masking everybody that does not conform to their policies and their dictates, because this is their last desperate effort to try to maintain financial hegemony. which in turn means political and military dominance. What we're seeing in real time is the downfall of American power, influence, and wealth. The downfall of European power, influence, and wealth. And guess what? They have nobody to blame but themselves. They have been inebriated or drunk off what they used to be. And this is causing missteps from the policymakers. And they are dying a death by 1,000 cuts because the politicians refuse to do what's right. And when you refuse to do what's right and you can do what's wrong, guess what happens? Wrong follows you. And so that now the economies, the political situation, and their military standing has been gripped by the consequences of their own policies. I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, enlightenment, and elevation. This is the Red Pill Diary, and I'm your host, your brother, and your friend in truth. If you love truth, know that I love you, but know that my love will always pale in comparison to the love that the true and living God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. And I apologize for Tom not making it, but we're going to make up for this, okay? Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. We're out of here. Peace.